A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
My Weird Prompts is a community-driven initiative exploring how AI can fuel curiosity and uncover the fascinating ways our world works. GPU compute for this podcast is generously provided by Modal. Learn more at modal.com.
Hey there, Herman and Corn. I hope that everything is well out there and that you're nice and cozy on one of the A100 GPUs that Modal let us hop on to multiple times per day. We are very grateful to the generous support that we're getting from Modal, or we have been getting from Modal, who have covered enough GPU compute that I can keep sending in these sometimes absurd, hopefully sometimes thought-provoking and informative prompts at different hours of the day. And we're really just continuing to see, hey, what can we do if we get an AI tool to generate a podcast? And it's quite an elaborate pipeline. For those who are ever wondering, how does this weird kind of AI experimentary podcast actually get made? The answer is up there on the internet. It's on mywordprompts.com. And we've done two kind of deep dive episodes where I'm going to say explain to me, but I'm not actually that uninformed about our own production pipeline or the production pipeline, because it's gone through a lot of iterations, and it's really an agentic AI process whereby I'm kind of identifying things that go wrong in the episodes, points of fragility in the pipeline, when the MCP isn't working as it should, or when I feel like the system prompt needs a bit of tuning. And then we iterate, and it's currently, it's a Telegram bot / Claude Code. I'm actually using Claude Code to call our MCP for production. And then that gets the job running on Modal. And Modal is basically a serverless GPU platform. They have these wonderfully high-spec GPUs. And it took me a long time to really wrap my head around serverless. I guess maybe because I was born in the late 80s. I said, serverless, there has to be a server somewhere. It's a stupid name, it's a buzzword. And I was actually really surprised when I was trying to get the first version of this podcast pipeline working, and I couldn't get anything to run locally. It just wasn't feasible, and I didn't really want to be running very demanding and high inference jobs on my home computer, but the API costs were super expensive. So the cool thing about Modal, one, to my great surprise, it actually came in significantly cheaper. B, it's kind of more hands-on and reliable. I like watching the logs, and you can see exactly if anything goes wrong. You're not just kind of like, oh, the API request failed. So it genuinely is a great platform. So anyway, Herman and Corn, I have a question for you. You may know that I spent most of my career working in that kind of weird middle ground between the people who do marketing and product and all the kind of sales jobs, marketing jobs that you need in order to get people to buy the stuff that your coders make, those people. And I guess sitting at that intersection, tech documentation, interfacing with product, writing white papers about scintillating topics like how do you get internet connectivity at sea? And although I may sound sarcastic, that was actually a pretty good white paper, because in retrospect, I've become really interested in that topic. At the time, it would probably seem a bit random, but those are the kind of things that I used to do and I have done in my career. At various points, so I began taking on freelance work when I moved to Israel, and I noticed something about the market that this was, I guess, before AI. There were so many people branding themselves as tech writers. And look, there are some very good ones, very capable tech documentation folks out there, but there's also a lot of bluffers, people who don't really know what they're really speaking about. And I think it creates an impression that we all struggle with, that, yeah, we don't really want to deal with external people because they're just not going to get what we do. So I had the idea of, why don't I do a certification? Now, the challenge, and this is still very much the challenge for me, is what do you do if your clients are in, you have a client in cybersecurity and you've won in AWS and you've won in, different fields, right? You don't probably have time or an incentive to go collecting sort of entry tier certifications. I did, however, wade through AWS coursework, and almost I was getting like 90% in those dojo exams, whatever those things were called. Then COVID struck, and when stuff finally opened again, including the testing centers, I was definitely past thinking about AWS and S3 buckets. It was pretty dry material. This was like their cloud practitioner exam. But I was thinking the other day, so I use Google Cloud Platform, GCP, a lot, and I've come to really like it. And I was like, actually, I think I know this platform pretty well now. I could probably pass a cert if they have one. And then again, the same question. I'm like, is that really going to do anything? Like, what would that actually do for my career? Is it going to win me business? Because they're going to say, well, we weren't thinking of hiring you, but when we saw that Google Cloud certification, we changed our mind. And I can say, it was worth it. I got this one client. It could be a fun experience or a worthwhile experience. It's always satisfying to set yourself an objective, but especially with everything going on at the moment, the war here in Israel, being a father to a 9-month-old, having to find a new place to live in 4 months. Actually, as I think this out, I realize I probably don't have any time whatsoever to be thinking about a certification. But when life settles back down again, Herman and Corin, what do you think is the real value in these? Because I feel like there's always been a lot of skepticism from those in tech towards certifications. And I feel like most of it's actually pretty well founded. There's a lot of certifications that just exist for people who think that, well, if we have a piece of paper, that's going to change things. I do feel like an AI certification that was actually deep enough to mean something would be worthwhile. And maybe that's the kind of thing I should be aiming for. But there's so many of them out there, and so many courses and so many gurus and tutors that sometimes you just don't even know where to start. On the odd event, Herman and Corin, that you do have some tips, I will tell you what type of learner I am. I quite enjoy watching videos, even though that's often not the best way to learn tech stuff where you have labs. I kind of like that. I find reading books about code a really weird experience. So that's not something I do very well in. But, I feel like I could commit myself to something if I just really believed it was actually good enough. Herman and Corin, what do you think about folks like me who are in their late 30s? It sounds terrible to say it. And we're thinking, is there anything that's actually a worthwhile thing to have on my CV? Or would this just be kind of a pointless distraction that would just enrich some testing center and probably impress nobody whatsoever? Herman and Corin, over to you two.
Herman, have you looked at LinkedIn lately? It is like everyone I know has suddenly decided to become a digital Boy Scout. My feed is just a wall of gold-bordered certificates and badges for things like Prompt Engineering Level 1 or AI Business Transformation Specialist. It is getting a bit crowded out there in the credential space.
It is the Certification Industrial Complex, Corn. I am Herman Poppleberry, by the way, for anyone joining us for the first time. You are right, though. As of March 2026, the market for AI-related certifications has grown by 45% year over year. It is a massive business, but the signal-to-noise ratio is becoming a real problem for professionals trying to figure out what actually moves the needle.
Today's prompt from Daniel is about exactly that. He is asking about the real value of these AI certifications, especially for mid-career professionals in their late 30s. He wants to know if they actually help with career growth or winning clients, which ones are deep enough to be worthwhile, and how to handle all this if you prefer video learning over cracking open a technical textbook.
This is such a timely question from Daniel because we are seeing a major shift right now. We have moved past the era of just being aware that AI exists. In 2026, the expectation has shifted toward applied engineering and what people are calling agentic orchestration. If you are 38 years old and trying to stay relevant, you have to stop chasing badges and start chasing leverage.
I love that phrase, chasing leverage. It sounds much more productive than chasing a PDF that says you watched 10 hours of video. But let's look at that mid-career angle. If you are in your late 30s or early 40s, is a certificate really going to help you pivot? Or is it just going to look like you are having a very specific type of midlife crisis?
The data actually tells a pretty surprising story here. There was a hiring experiment released by the World Economic Forum in February that looked at how AI skills affect older applicants. They found that for professionals in that late 30s and early 40s bracket, having the right AI certifications actually offset some of the conventional disadvantages people face when they have been in the workforce for 15 or 20 years.
Wait, so instead of a sports car, I should just get a certificate in large language model operations?
Maybe both, but the certificate might pay for the car. The experiment showed that professionals in that age group with verifiable AI skills saw a 22% faster promotion rate into leadership roles like AI transformation leader or even chief AI officer. For consultants and freelancers, it is even more direct. These certifications act as trust signals. If you are trying to convince an enterprise client to move from a small experiment to a full-scale AI factory, they want to see that you have gone through the rigors of something like the International Association of Privacy Professionals AI Governance Professional Certification.
That makes sense for the high-level strategy folks, but what about the actual depth? I feel like I could spend my entire life getting certified in AI fundamentals from every cloud provider on the planet and still not know how to actually build anything that works.
That is the big trap. We are seeing a massive bifurcation in the market right now. You have the baseline literacy certifications, things like Microsoft's AI 900 or Google's AI Essentials. Those are becoming the new version of saying you know how to use Microsoft Word. They are fine, they get you past the initial HR filter, but they do not provide a competitive advantage.
So if everyone has the baseline is worthless. It is like having a high school diploma in a room full of doctoral candidates.
Well, not exactly, but you know what I mean. The real value is in the deep technical certifications that just launched this month. Microsoft released the AI 1003, which is focused on Azure AI app and agent development. NVIDIA just put out their Generative AI LLM Professional Certification. These are focusing on the stuff that actually matters in 2026, like retrieval, augmented generation optimization, and agentic workflows.
Can we talk about that technical depth for a second? Because I think a lot of these 4-week courses promise the world, but they skip the hard stuff. They tell you how to talk to a chatbot, but they do not explain why the chatbot is hallucinating or why your context window is suddenly full of garbage.
That is where the depth versus distraction debate gets real. A lot of certifications fail because they do not teach the failure modes. They teach you the happy path where everything works perfectly. But in the real world, understanding tokenization and context window management is way more valuable than knowing how to write a clever prompt.
Explain that to me like I am a sloth who has been sleeping through the last 2 years of development. Why is tokenization more important than the prompt?
Because tokenization is the fundamental way these models see the world. If you do not understand how a model breaks down text into tokens, you cannot predict how it will handle complex data, or why it might struggle with certain languages or technical jargon. And when you look at context window management, that is where the real engineering happens. In 2026, we are dealing with massive context windows, but if you just dump a million tokens into a model, the performance degrades. It is called the lost in the middle phenomenon. A deep certification will teach you how to architect your data so the model actually finds the relevant information.
So it is about the plumbing, not the paint job.
It is entirely about the plumbing. If you are a mid-career professional, your advantage isn't that you can code faster than a 22-year-old. Your advantage is that you understand the business logic and the systems. If you combine that domain expertise with a deep understanding of LLM ops, you are suddenly the most valuable person in the room. You are the one who can explain why a RAG system is failing to retrieve the right documents because the embedding model does not match the search query's intent.
I think that is a huge point about the late 30s advantage. We have seen enough systems fail to know that the new shiny thing always has hidden costs. But Daniel also asked about the learning process itself. Not everyone wants to sit down with a 700-page book on neural networks. If someone is a video-first learner, how do they actually acquire these skills without it just being passive consumption?
This is where we have to talk about the death of vibe coding, which we touched on in episode 1535. If you are just watching a video and nodding along, you are vibing, but you aren't learning. The gold standard for video-based technical learning is still Andrej Karpathy. His Neural Networks Zero to Hero series is the most cited resource for a reason. He does not just talk, he builds the entire architecture from scratch on screen.
Andrei Karpathy's videos are great, but they are intense. It is like trying to learn how to build a jet engine by watching someone machine every single bolt by hand.
But that is the level of depth you need if you want to move beyond the surface. For the business-focused professionals, you have people like Liam Otley who focuses on the agency side and client-facing skills. But the key for a video learner is the build-to-learn methodology. You watch a segment, you pause it, you implement it, you break it, and then you try to fix it before you hit play again.
It is the pause button that is the most important part of the video. If you never hit pause, you aren't learning.
That is it, and we are seeing new interactive platforms emerging. Hicksfield and Synthesia added interactive branching late last year that allows for more active video learning. Even the government is getting in on it. Today, March 26th, the U.S. Department of Labor launched the Make America AI Ready program. It is a mobile-first micro-learning initiative delivered via text and video. It is designed for rapid upskilling for people who are already working full-time jobs.
I am always a little skeptical of government-led tech initiatives, but if it helps people get over that initial hump, I suppose it is a good thing. But let's go back to the certifications themselves. If I am looking at a course and trying to decide if it is a distraction or a career builder, what are the red flags?
Red flag number 1 is any certification that does not require a non-trivial deployment or proctored lab. If it is just a multiple choice quiz that you can pass by asking a different AI for the answers, it is a resume padding credential at best. Microsoft actually recognized this recently. In March, they announced that several of their associate level exams are moving to proctored lab formats to combat AI-assisted cheating.
That is hilarious. We are using AI to cheat on exams about AI. We have truly reached peak 2026.
It was inevitable. But red flag number 2 is a focus on specific tools over general principles. If a course spends 80% of the time showing you where buttons are in a specific software interface, skip it. Interfaces change every 6 months. If it spends that time explaining the math of transformer architectures or the nuances of vector database indexing, that is knowledge that will still be relevant in 2030.
What about the safety and governance side? Daniel mentioned certifications like the IAPP's AIGP. Is that where the money is for the non-coders?
It is a massive growth area. Just today, UL Solutions issued the world's first AI safety certifications for physical infrastructure called UL 3115. This is a huge shift. We are moving from AI as a digital toy to AI as a regulated, safety-critical component of our physical world. If you are a mid-career professional in industries like manufacturing, energy, or healthcare, being the person who understands AI safety and compliance is a massive career moat.
It sounds like we are moving toward a world where your reputation and your portfolio are your real certification. We talked about this in episode 1204 when we were looking at the 10,000-hour rule. Mastery in 2026 isn't about how much time you spend sitting in a chair. It is about how quickly you can adapt to new frameworks.
I agree. The future of credentials is likely moving toward proof-of-work portfolios. Instead of a static PDF, you show a GitHub repository or a documented deployment of an agentic system that solved the real business problem. Hiring managers are already weighting demonstrable project experience 3 times higher than certifications in their internal data.
So the certificate is the handshake, but the project is the actual conversation.
That is a great way to put it. The certificate gets you the interview, especially for those in their late 30s who might be worried about ageism or being seen as out of touch. It shows you are engaged and proactive. But once you are in the room, you need to be able to talk about the system design. You need to be able to explain why you chose a specific embedding model or how you handled the latency issues in your RAG pipeline.
I think we've given Daniel a lot to chew on here. It sounds like the roadmap is get 1 or 2 high signal certifications to satisfy the HR filters and signal your commitment, but spend the bulk of your time building actual systems. And if you're using videos for the love of everything, hit the pause button and write some code.
And do not ignore the new agentic frameworks. Things like the open source AutoGen 2.0 that came out in January are the benchmarks for what professionals should be learning right now. If you can build a multi-agent system that actually completes a complex task, That is worth more than a dozen foundational certificates.
Before we wrap up, let's hit some practical takeaways for anyone listening who's currently staring at a checkout screen for a $2,000 AI masterclass.
First, filter by project requirement. If the certification doesn't require you to deploy something that actually does something, it is probably just a distraction. Second, follow the video to code pipeline. Watch it, pause it, implement it, break it, and fix it. Third, focus on system design over model training. Most of us aren't going to be training the next frontier model, but all of us are going to be designing the systems that use them.
And don't forget the domain expertise. If you have 20 years of experience in supply chain management, don't try to become a general AI expert. Become the world's leading expert on applying agentic AI to supply chain logistics. That is where the $200,000 to $500,000 salaries are.
That is the real leverage. Your past experience isn't baggage, it is the foundation. AI is just the new toolset you are using to solve the problems you already understand better than anyone else.
I think that is a perfect place to leave it. Daniel, thanks for the prompt. It really forced us to look at the reality behind the hype of the certification boom.
It is a fascinating time to be learning. The tools are getting better every day, but the fundamental need for deep understanding hasn't changed.
Big thanks to Modal for providing the GPU credits that power this show. We literally couldn't do this without them.
And thanks as always to our producer Hilbert Flumingtop for keeping us on track and making sure I don't ramble too much about vector embeddings.
This has been My Weird Prompts. If you're enjoying the show, a quick review on your podcast app really helps us reach new listeners who might be stuck in the certification loop.
You can find us at myweirdprompts.com for the full archive and all the ways to subscribe.
See you next time.
Take care.
This episode was generated using Gemini Flash 3. Text-to-speech engine was Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, My Weird Prompts, where our thoughts go from slow takes to facts on cue. We change and